Right, today we are going to check out probably my most anticipated camera. This is the new Sony a7 IV. I was lucky enough to be able to test this out for about a day to really kind of test it out a little bit for photo and for video. The weather conditions were not ideal, but sometimes that's actually a good way to be able to test a camera because you actually get a sense for how it's going to perform in the real world. Now, the reason this is one of my most anticipated cameras is I have been using this range of Sony cameras all the way back to 2018, which is when the Sony a7 III came out. That became my go-to everyday camera for my personal stuff and my professional stuff. That's a fantastic hybrid option, still great to this day, to be honest with you, a great hybrid all-rounder. The a7 IV came out in 2021. I did upgrade to that. That's the camera I use for all the YouTube videos now on this channel, which is again a lovely hybrid all-rounder and absolutely something that I find so easy to use and is able to deliver some great results. And the a7 IV is looking to absolutely keep that tradition going. A hybrid, an all-rounder, and frankly, it has a lot of the things that I wanted to see added to this range of cameras, which I'm so thrilled about. And it meant that actually testing this out was an absolute dream come true in a lot of ways. The reason I think that it's so exciting is the a7 range of cameras is really designed for kind of everyone, right? It's the more accessible price point for the Sony cameras, but still delivering fantastic results. Sony always refer to the a7 range as the basic model in the range, which always feels a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I kind of get where they're coming from. It sits, I guess, below some of the other ranges, but absolutely this does not feel basic in the slightest. So let's dive into a little bit about what the a7 IV is, what's new here, and why I'm so impressed with this as an upgrade. Now, initially, when you see the camera, when you first handle the camera, it looks and feels very familiar, especially if you're familiar with this range of cameras. It feels good in the hands, but not much appears to have changed. It shares very much in common with the design. But on further inspection, there is actually quite a bit that's different here. Things like the C5 button on the front have been removed. The grip is really a little bit deeper. It feels good in the hands. It does feel a little bit more comfortable. And the screen on the back is a little bit bigger as well as being a 4-axis tilting screen, which just makes it easier to get into different positions that you might want to be able to get it into. There are other differences inside the camera, which we'll get onto in a little bit, but let's talk a bit about the kind of image quality and exactly what else is new here. So we have got a brand new sensor in the camera. It's the same resolution as we saw in the a7 IV, which is 33 megapixels, which I actually think is probably the exact right resolution for this kind of camera, right? You have the a7R5. If you want a higher resolution option, I think 33 megapixels allows you a little bit of room for cropping, right? You've got some extra resolution there to play with, but it keeps the file sizes a little bit more manageable. And with that in mind, you now have this lightweight RAW option. And actually, they've simplified the menus as well. Lossless compressed RAW is now the top option when you actually go to select what kind of RAW you would like to be shooting. And it's actually the same quality as uncompressed. So everything is just simplified and much easier to understand when it comes to the differences between the kinds of quality you're going to be capturing. So you can make that trade-off between quality and file size. And now you've got 16 stops of dynamic range to play with as well. The image quality here, I think, looks fantastic. Shooting with high ISO values, I think, is absolutely great as well. Something which I really, really like out of these cameras, and that seems to be getting better and better and better. It just makes it even more versatile to be able to shoot. And speaking of versatility, you now have a significantly upgraded autofocus and speed situation with the a7 IV. Part of that is because you have a brand new Bion's XR2 processor, which integrates the AI processing unit that we've seen in cameras like the A1 II, and that gives you some of that autofocus that you see there. Things like real-time subject recognition with their AI unit, human pose recognition, just makes your life so much easier when you're actually shooting, whether it's fast-moving subjects or really anything else at all. And speaking of fast-moving subjects, you can now shoot up to 30 frames a second, and that's blackout free as well. And of course, you have pre-capture here as well, which means that if you want to shoot wildlife or sport, it's even easier now to do this with the a7 IV. It really feels like a very, very solid all-rounder without really too many compromises in any direction. You've got some really good speed there, and some great autofocus. Again, if you wanted to specialize a little bit more in that direction, you've got cameras like the A1 II, the A9 III, but I think that this is going to be an absolutely great camera for some of that faster moving action, and again, for wildlife and sport as well. Now, just sticking with that AI unit, which is integrated, like I say, into the new processor, you also have things like an AI auto mode and something which I think is quite cool, improved auto white balance as well by using deep learning. Now, that is something that I think is really quite clever, because it's something I've struggled with a couple of times using auto white balance in different scenes, right? If you're in a forest, maybe it starts to add too much magenta because it's detecting a lot of green. But with the improved auto white balance using that deep learning, actually, that should enable you to get much better accuracy when you're using that. And that's something that I really like to rely on. Obviously, I shoot in RAW, I can change it later, but actually, this is a much more useful thing to have available to you. Now, before we get onto video, which is a key part of the A7 range and actually something that I use the A7 IV for all the time, let's just stop to talk about the image stabilization for a second, because this is improved from the A7 IV. It's 7.5 stops, so that's up from 5.5 stops on the A7 IV. And I've got to be completely honest with you, this blew me away. So all these shots you're seeing now were shot completely handheld with me walking around, and it feels like I'm shooting on a gimbal. Even when I was actually shooting with the camera, I could not believe how steady these shots were. And that is, again, just something which makes shooting with this camera so versatile. This is a shot that was taken with a 1-second exposure, completely handheld. Here's another one, in case you want to check out a second one that I did, because I really felt like the image stabilization was performing so well. I wanted to see if it really could actually handle something like a 1-second exposure, right? Which is actually generally quite a significant test for a stabilization like this. Now, again, for handheld video, this is really how I like to shoot. I don't love using a gimbal. I prefer to be able to run and gun, be a bit more maneuverable. So being able to have those steady shots available to me, even handheld, is incredible. And speaking of video, let's talk about this, because this is a pretty massive upgrade from the A7 IV. So with the A7 IV, you could shoot 4K 30, no problem. 4K 60 had a crop, so you had a little bit of slow motion there. Of course, Full HD 120 with no crop as well, which is useful. But with the A7 V, you can now shoot all the way up to 4K 120 frames a second, which honestly is exactly what I wanted to see. Now, that does have a crop. It has an APS-C crop, which I don't actually think is the worst thing in the world, because I actually sometimes use that to get a little bit more reach out of my lenses. That's how I use it with the A7 IV. If you do want to shoot without a crop, you can shoot 4K 60. Of course, you've still got Full HD 120 as well, which is super useful. And you've got some other things added in here, which we've seen trickle down from other cameras, like again, the A1 IIs, things like that. We've got S-Cinetone. We've got All-I 422 10-bit. So we're getting some great quality video. And that S-Cinetone also allows you to get some really nice looking stuff as well, straight out of camera. Things like the auto framing are now added in, because we have the AI chip available that's integrated again with the processor, and video recording times are improved here because you now have 2 heat sinks instead of 1, which again is fantastic. Now, I don't really run into that as much of a problem with the A7 IV, but if you are in a very warm environment, and sometimes when I film close to my computer screens, that can become a little bit of an issue after about 30 minutes or so. So knowing that it has 2 heat sinks instead of 1, and that is improved, is just fantastic news. All around there for the video, I think that is a really nice upgrade over the A7 IV. In terms of the actual look and the design of the camera, like I said before, it's familiar, right? It does feel familiar. It feels good in the hands as well. You have that bigger LCD screen, which makes a massive difference when you are shooting. Again, whether you're shooting video or photo, it's just nice to have that bigger screen. We're starting to see that a little bit more across the industry now, and I think it's actually a really, really good thing. It sort of removes the necessity for an external monitor quite as much. It's also 4-axis tilting, like I mentioned earlier, which again, just makes it easier to get it into the position that you want it to be in. And we also see some other things which I think are really quite nice here. Some just small quality of life things. Like, for example, the UI will actually switch to a vertical orientation when the camera is turned. Something which is very, very small, and we've seen it on previous Sony cameras. It's nice to see it here in the A7 V as well. Now, because that AI chip is integrated into the processor, it means that the camera is a little bit more power efficient. So you're also getting slightly better battery life life as well, which again, massive plus side, right? And on top of that, you've got 2 USB-C ports on the camera as well. Now, I love everything about this. I'm extremely excited. I might be a touch biased because I love the A7 range, but this has everything I really wanted to see. The 4K 120, better image stabilization as well, and actually keeping that resolution, I think, is the smart move. With that AI chip integrated in as well, you're getting all the great stuff that we've seen in cameras like the ZVE1, the A1 II. We're seeing a lot of stuff trickle into this camera, and I think that this is not only a great upgrade from the A7 IV, but if you wanted to get a great all-rounder hybrid camera that isn't going to be as expensive as something like the A1 II, this is absolutely a great place to be looking. I think the Sony a7 IV is going to be capable of a lot of great things. I cannot wait to get my hands on it again for a more extensive test. Now, you can check out the full specs, as well as everything else you want to know about the camera, pricing, all that kind of stuff, over at parcameras.com. Link in the description so you can go and check that out. Super easy. Don't forget to like and subscribe as well, because there's new content all the time. I will, of course, see you in the next video. Until then, as always, thanks for watching.